Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Happy Active. My name's Ellie, and I'm the host. This week I spoke to Rachel Montero, who is a nurse practitioner who now works in gut and hormone health. Her company is called Wholeness and Health, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I think I asked her to come on because gut health has been talked about a lot in other episodes, but we've never done a kind of deeper dive into gut and hormone health specifically. And so I just thought it would be helpful because I know it's almost becoming one of these things that gets terms that gets chucked around on social media with no real explanations. So I hope you'll find this really valuable. And as ever, if you've got any thoughts, feedbacks, topics you would like covered, love to hear about it. And that's it. I hope you enjoy the episode. Um, there are many ways to find your path to better health and happiness, and what works is highly individualized. My philosophy is that most people are more likely to find that if they're active participants in their own journey. This is a space to start exploring some of the rich and varied areas in which people practice, so you can start thinking about what resonates with you and discover new or different practices to start or deepen your own health practices. And today I have Rachel Montero, who runs Wholeness and Health, and she specializes in gut and hormone health. So welcome, Rachel. And why don't you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I am Rachel. I am a nurse practitioner, and I have transitioned essentially away from the traditional path, conventional medicine, into more holistic root cause care. So I really help women who've been navigating different gut and hormone related challenges, including chronic digestive issues, bloating, IBS, even skin issues, acne, or brain fog, fatigue, stomach pains, different symptoms where they have sought care, they haven't gotten proper support, and typically that is not properly addressed in conventional care because it's more of an early onset before it becomes a chronic illness or diagnosed as a chronic illness. So in that in between, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
unknowns. So that's where I come in and fill that gap and help you understand what's actually going on internally in your body, really understand, get to the root cause of that and help you heal at the root so that you can experience relief there.
Amazing. And so I think, I'm sure having a nursing background really helps with being able to figure out how different symptoms might be from the same cause. Because something
Yes.
that I've noticed and that I hear a lot from women is that, they might have gone to their OB and there's a couple of things, but they're not necessarily all related to a gynecological condition. And then they might go to their wellness annual check, and then there's a couple of other symptoms that might not be related to something that their general practitioner would see them for. So they don't get joined up. And then it can turn out those are actually the same cause, but none of those practitioners are looking at the whole picture in the same way.
Yes, exactly. In conventional medicine, it's very much each system has its own specialist. However, our body is so interconnected and our systems are really working as a team. For example, our gut health is so connected with our hormones, with our thyroid, with our mental health. It's all working together and interconnected. Yet, when they're viewed as separate entities, we are missing the huge piece as far as how our body is working each day and how our body is functioning optimally and how to support that. So that's often why, one reason why, when, for example, maybe someone is navigating PMS issues and they're told, oh, just take a birth control pill, send them on their way. When in fact, we have to look at, for example, the gut can play a big role in balanced hormones. So we need to look there. We need to look at minerals as another piece. So there's all of these multifactorial pieces that we need to put together. So I like to frame it as I'm solving the puzzle here because I'm not just viewing it as, oh, here's this one section, this one area to focus on. It's how is it interacting? How is it being impacted by these other areas within your body, other systems?
Yes, and it's interesting because you mentioned as well, like it can be skin conditions, and I guess so. Actually, something that happens to me when I get stressed out, I get like, well, this is the thing because you go to the dermatologist and she gave me a diagnosis that didn't really chime with me for when it was happening. But anyway, but then she couldn't give me any treatment for it because at the time the treatment she would have given me was steroids, and I was breastfeeding, so I couldn't put it on my skin.
Mm.
Um, and then it went away. And then when I looked more into it, I realized it was like when I'm stressed, my tolerance for lactose digestion gets worse. And so it's like, weirdly, it's like those two things interacting. So most of the time I can handle lactose quite well, but actually I just need to have less of it when I'm stressed out because it upsets my
Mm.
skin. But it's only at those
Mm.
specific times, right? So it can be hard to figure that out sometimes.
Yeah, to connect those dots, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned stress being a big factor. Stress is huge. And we may be told, okay, manage your stress or reduce your stress, but sometimes life is just lifing and there's a lot of things happening and we haven't been taught how to support our body, support our nervous system to navigate that stress where it doesn't have the same impact on our body. But thankfully, there's so much we can do to help mitigate that impact with stress.
Yeah. I know. Actually, the time that I was talking about with that was, stress from not sleeping enough. But at the time I had a 8-week-old baby with colic, and
Mhm.
you can tell from my accent, I'm not from America, so I don't have much family here, and my husband was working away quite a lot. So basically, a lot of the time I was, so you can't sleep. And then
Yeah.
she went through. At least I was having that thing, they say nap when the baby naps. So I was getting that. And then she went through this delightful phase for about 6 weeks where she did sleep at least in her bassinet at night, but in the daytime she would only nap outside in the stroller on a walk. So then I would be having like 2, maybe 3 hours sleep at night. And then in the daytime, I was having to walk for like maybe 5 miles a day to get her to sleep.
Oh,
So I was like a zombie. But obviously, then there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to do it. And so
yeah.
then obviously you're stressed because you're so tired, but it's not your body. So your body is, it wasn't necessarily mental stress, but your body is under huge physical stress. But you can't actually, all you can do then is try and, hydrate really well, eat as well as you can, and like
Yeah.
remember that it's probably going to end fairly soon, in that these things are phases. But there's not much like you say, life is lifing. So you can only mitigate what's happening, not actually fix it.
Yes, exactly.
Gut health, I guess, is one of these things that it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and as you were saying, it kind of can affect almost everything. So I think I'd be really helpful to hear a bit about like what it is and what are like some simple things we can do to keep it healthy.
Yes, yes, I love this. So, gut health can definitely feel intimidating and feel overwhelming. So, I like to simplify it in the lens of when thinking of your gut health, it plays a big role with, for example, how you're taking in nutrients with the food that you're consuming. So maybe you're eating
Mm-hmm.
healthy, you're eating clean, yet you feel like you're not getting the benefit. Maybe you're trying to lose weight, or maybe you're just trying to optimize your health, address some symptoms, and you're not reaping that reward. Or maybe you have food sensitivities. Well, when our gut is off, it could be for a multitude of reasons. If it cannot digest properly, if there are some sneaky pathogens in there, for example, abnormal bacteria throwing things off, then that can negatively impact how well we're taking in the nutrients that we're consuming. So, as a result, as a lack of nutrients, then we're not, for example, able to produce hormones optimally. We're not able to support the thyroid hormone, for example, as well. And maybe we're also feeling more stressed or navigating mood swings, irritability, things like that. And our gut can play a big role in that too. Speaking of, 70% of our serotonin, that happy hormone, is produced within the gut. So if our gut is stressed, if there's something going on in the gut, then serotonin, that happy hormone, is not being produced as optimally. And that directly impacts our mood. And even then, our gut is literally directly connected to our brain through what's called vagus nerve, which is, I like to frame it as a highway connecting the brain and the gut that plays a big
Mm-hmm.
role with communication happening. So, in that highway, when there's a traffic jam, when there's a car crash, communication's impaired, that throws off things within the gut. And also, too, can hinder our mental health and our brain health, our ability to focus, our mood, all these different pieces. And again, that comes back to how interconnected our body is. So, some simple things that I love that can have a really powerful domino effect for supporting your gut and overall body support the vagus nerve. Because when you support and
Mhm.
activate that vagus nerve, that directly improves communication between the brain and the gut. It also helps your body switch into, it's called that parasympathetic state. You're switching away from that fight or flight, that high stress, high adrenaline state into a calmer rest and digest parasympathetic state, which is better for healing. It's better for digestion. It's better for how
Mhm.
you feel as a whole. So you can activate your vagus nerve very simply. Few of my favorites would be singing or humming, and you can do this any time of day in the car, you're prepping some food, or just getting ready for work. You can just do that, and that itself
Mhm.
activates the vagus nerve. And also, it's like a nice little mood booster. You can do some humming too. Humming is great and very calming. You can also splash your face with cool water. Some people, I know it's a big thing right now with ice baths. And not to shame ice baths, they have their benefits. But if we're already in a heightened state and we're trying to support our cortisol, we're trying to calm that stress state in our body, then an ice bath may actually be too much. And we need to start more gentle. And we just start off with a gentle, cool water exposure. So that's another simple thing we can do. You can also gargle water as well. Laughter is great. So there's all these simple ways that have nothing to do with a pill that you can simply
Mhm.
support your body, and it can really become more of seamlessly integrated in your day and not just another to do or just another thing to add to your to-do list either.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a really good breakdown. And I think it's interesting because I think gut health has become one of these like terms that gets slung around a lot, so it can feel quite intimidating.
Yes.
And especially because it is so related to so many things
Yes.
that um, it can be quite overwhelming if you think that might be an issue. Because when you start googling it, it's like there's so much information, and it can feel
Mhm.
quite like, oh my goodness.
It's overwhelming, definitely.
Something that I found really interesting when I did my functional nutrition course is that she was saying when she does her diagnostics people when they've got the women who I work with, she really does people who've got long-term chronic issues, and sometimes when she does a thing, it'll often start with a course of antibiotics they took like 10 years ago, and then everything's kind
Mhm.
of cascaded down from there. But I was saying to someone recently, I do, because I think 10, even 4 or 5 years ago, people went aware of that, including doctors, so you'd get given antibiotics. But it was really interesting. So my daughter had an ear infection, a few months ago, and we got the antibiotics, and my pediatrician said, "Oh, it'd be a good idea to get some, um, just either some of those like yogurts that have a bit of prebiotic in them, or a prebiotic to give her at the same time." And I do that anyway. But it was really interesting that that is now becoming more standard advice, because probably it was only 2 years ago that I realized how taking antibiotics can, if you're sensitive, really have other problems because of the damage it can do to your gut microbiome.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. And it's again, antibiotics are pushed so commonly. And even as little ones, we're told to take antibiotics for X symptoms. And as parents, trying to do the best you can for your loved one, for your kiddo. So it is interesting, and I'm glad that there is more of an awareness about antibiotics impacting the gut microbiome. And it really can have a lasting impact, especially when taken repeatedly. And certainly sometimes we simply need it, and there's a time and a place
Mm-hmm.
for it. But many times there are so many other things we can do to address what's happening, and then long term prevent it from happening as best as we can, where 70%, 70 to 80% plus of our immune system lies within our gut too. So again, coming back to, it's like if we're just handing out antibiotics to address an illness, a symptom, etc., and then we are not seeing that our gut health actually plays a big role in how our immune system is functioning from the get-go, and then the antibiotic is kind of mitigating and hindering that immune system. It's just like fighting against each other. And um, I feel like there's starting to become more of an awareness where antibiotics, maybe there's another way, there's a better way. And even there's so much within our world that we have access to, natural herbs, antimicrobials that we have
Hmm.
access to that can have a really powerful impact without the adverse effects that an antibiotic has too.
Yes. Yeah. We and the only times that my daughter's taken them is when she has the ear infections. Then you're like, this has got to be dealt with. And mostly, she's actually pretty hardy anyway. But it's interesting because a couple of times when she's had like a cold, they'll offer them, and I'm like, but this is not like a. But I think it's because people, I guess, when your kids especially are miserable, you want to do something.
Mhm.
But often
Yes,
the
you need
solution
to
is
act
all right,
now.
and yeah. um, well, often the solution is rest, actually, but that's really hard to do with toddlers because they don't want to rest.
Yeah, yes. The last thing in their mind is rest.
um, so, what kind of symptoms? And this is a really big question, I'm aware, but what kind of symptoms can people, if people are having things and they think it might be like gut related, what are the kind of things that people can look out for to?
Uh, yes. So it really, so many symptoms can come back to the gut, but it's also seeing how the gut is impacting other systems at the same time. So it
Hmm.
could be maybe you're dealing with consistent bloating where you're noticing that it feels like no matter what you eat, your belly feels bloated, you feel sluggish, you feel heavy, your belly is distended. That's something to definitely keep an eye out and definitely want to get deeper and not let that progress. Also, looking at if there's stomach pain, if you're having cramping, if you are having irregular bowels, where I used to actually, before I even realized I was having these deeper imbalances, I would have random bouts where I'd have terrible stomach pains and have to run to the bathroom all of a sudden. And then I'd go days where I'm constipated. And I'm like,
Hmm.
is this normal? Is just a part of life, or am I just stressed, quote unquote? And for a while I just kind of lived with it and pushed through, and I had no idea that these were the early check engine lights going off, that something within the gut, but also too the other systems, my nervous system, my hormone health, etc., were also stressed out. And these were early signs of a deeper problem developing, which ultimately, if we ignore it, it turns into that chronic illness. It turns into hospitalizations. It turns into a more significant diagnosis. So, those are definitely symptoms to be aware of. Also, simply noticing if you're feeling a lack of clarity, brain fog consistently, if you're
Hmm.
extra fatigued or you hit 2 p.m. every day and you just want to take a nap, that's definitely something to be mindful of when it comes to your gut. Also, looking at acne, eczema, psoriasis, those all come back to the health of the gut. If the gut is impaired, that leads to poor detoxification also happening. And then when your liver has an extra burden placed on it, then our skin gets the blunt of it. And it's like its last resort to try to remove toxins from our body, hence why we get flare ups, acne, etc. So,
Hmm.
yes, it's definitely a variety of symptoms that can all tie back to gut health. But I encourage, if they are happening, to seek someone who can help you put those puzzle pieces together sooner rather than later and not
Yeah.
ignore those symptoms.
Yeah, because something that I learned and that I hadn't realized is that some of these things, like obviously, the longer they go on, the more difficult they can get to undo because then
Mhm.
real damage can start to happen. But also because the knock-on effects start getting more serious, where some of this stuff, if you the earlier you catch it, the quicker then it can almost be like a couple of weeks to feel way better
Yes, yes,
because it's quite a good
definitely.
self-correcting system.
Yes, exactly. Our body can heal. Sometimes it needs some support in that, and that's okay too. We just have to
Yeah.
learn how to tune into that.
Yeah. I think it was interesting what you were saying because it was just making me think, like with the bowel stuff. I think what's
Yeah.
interesting is because sometimes we don't a the what's kind of quote unquote normal in the sense that if you went to your general practitioner, that wouldn't raise any flags for them. It's quite a broad range of like going multiple times a day or not going, maybe only going once or twice a week, especially in regards to pooping. And so it's quite broad, and then it's not something we necessarily talk about. So you don't even necessarily realize what's going on might not be normal, because it's not like we all, sit around with our girlfriends chatting about how often we poop, where we might
Yes.
do with maybe periods. People
Yeah.
get an idea that that's not normal more easily, and where actually bowel function is a really good indicator of health, but because people don't talk about it, they might not even realize that what's
Mm.
going on isn't that normal.
Yes. Exactly, and I feel like there is kind of like an embarrassment around talking about our bowels, yet it's human, we all
Yeah.
do it. We all have to
Hmm.
go, and it is so true. We can learn so much from our poop, and the Bristol stool scale is a great little tool. It's a nice visual to
Yeah.
actually, excuse me, compare your bowel movements with what they should be. And ideally, number 4 is like golden. That's where you want to aim for based on that scale. And if you're anywhere above or below that number, it's important to tune in to see that that's actually abnormal. And
Hmm.
I feel like there is a stigma around talking openly about these things. And I also feel like, too, a lot of women have felt dismissed already by their provider, that they're like,
Hmm.
why bother? Why speak up about
Yeah.
this? Because it's like, I've been dismissed before. So they kind of feel like, why even keep trying, or why even keep talking about this, which is another piece of it. And it's disheartening. And I feel that many women feel alone in this journey too. And I definitely did as well when I was in
Yeah.
it. Now, many of my clients have felt that way too, where it's just like, where do I even go? And they kind of just like struggle in their little bubble. They struggle alone. And then that
Hmm.
further heightens more symptoms at the same time.
Yes, because like we said, the stress is such a big part of it. And I think it is difficult, yes, because we all know that women's health is not taken very seriously. And the problem is with a lot of this stuff is that it can seem like minor stuff, but it's all adding up. And like, if you wake up every day feeling exhausted, even though you've had 8 hours sleep because your body's not working properly, and then that makes you snappy and not a good partner and not a good parent and not as good at your job as you would want, and then that stress kind of leads in and it's all getting worse and worse, but it's not a big enough thing. Maybe if you've got a really good, doctor, they might check your iron level, but that's
Uh-huh.
pretty much it. And then, because it's really hard to be like, even it's having a day-to-day impact on your life, when it's just like, oh, I just don't feel very well rested and like my stomach's uncomfortable, but it's not
Yeah.
like pain in the sense that we would do a put a camera down there to see, it's nothing. We've checked your blood, so you don't have cancer, so you can go. But actually, it
Yeah.
impacts your quality of life every day, and it also impacts your long-term health outcomes.
Yes, that quality of life is huge. And I feel like many of us feel like we need to push through. We feel like we need to suck it up. We just need to deal with
Hmm.
it. We need to going on with our day. We have all these responsibilities, all of these things we need to get done. And we set aside our needs, and we set aside what our body is trying to tell us. And this is something that I learned the hard way, is when we ignore those early symptoms and when we ignore those check engine lights going off, and when we try to even mask it with a pill, sometimes even a supplement can be masking as well,
Hmm.
where then we're just heightening the load on our body, and it's only going to keep progressing. And this is where I am so passionate about helping bring more awareness to giving people hope and knowing that they can experience relief. They do not need to live this way. They can get proper answers that explain and
Hmm.
validate their symptoms. And there is a way out. There is a way that you can absolutely thrive and feel so much more free in your body. But it's important to recognize that until something shifts with our healthcare system, conventional medicine simply doesn't address it. We have to seek that holistic path in order to have that frame of mind, in order to have that approach where we can really understand your body in a different way. And it's not just being dismissed, and it's not being pushed off until it turns into a cancer diagnosis or a significant diagnosis. And even I've had many women come to me and they're told, I've had even invasive tests done. I've had that endoscopy, colonoscopy,
Mhm.
came back essentially normal. And it's a lot to go through to be told that it's normal. And to that in
Yeah.
itself is like, oh, it's just, it's defeating.
Yeah. And it's really disheartening because then you think, oh my gosh, is this like a mental health issue then? Am I like
Yes.
imagining it? Or do other people just, everyone feels like this and I just don't, I'm just whatever, pathetic. I can't manage life.
Definitely.
And it's really difficult. So I have one doctor here who refers me clients, and I'm hoping that this is going to become more of a thing. But basically, she refers people to me when she's like, "Your like your problem is." It's often when people have had like high, they're getting pre-diabetic or they're very at risk for heart disease. But she's like, "I can't help you. Like, you need to make changes to your life that are not they're med the impacts of them are having a medical effect on you, but they're not. I'm a doctor, not a. So you need to go and see someone who can help you because I guess once people have got to like a certain weight or those kind of problems, they know their problem and they obviously can't fix them for themselves, which isn't a bad thing. But having that support to actually just figure out how to then start making those changes, and you aim within. Like my aim is always like 3 to 6 months to have them be able to do all that stuff on their own to figure out, because most people, if you've got to £200 and over 10 years, like you've probably tried quite a lot of things, you know what doesn't work for you, but it's then
Yeah.
finding, okay, well, what does work? And like, what
Yes.
am I missing in terms of support or people around me to help make
Mm,
this stuff work? And
yeah.
I don't know, that makes me feel hopeful. It's obviously quite an anomaly of one, but it makes me feel hopeful that there is beginning to be some understanding in the medical community that some of this stuff has medical impact, but it's not actually yet a medical problem, or it needs a non like medical solution
Yes.
to help. And if we can work together instead of being enemies, it can be helpful.
Definitely, yes. It's like we all are on the same team here. We all want to help and
Yeah.
ultimately help people to feel better and to heal. And I feel it's definitely relearning. I had to relearn what I was taught in NP school when I transitioned into the
Mm-hmm.
holistic space. I had to completely relearn so many things. But at the same time, even while I was in NP school and nursing school and working at the hospital, I remember like feeling like there's a huge gap here. And I don't have all the answers, but I know that we're missing so much to this puzzle. There is clearly a gap in how we care for our patients. Why are patients continuing to be readmitted to the hospital? Why are
Mm-hmm.
patients continuing to get sicker? Why are we just pushing a pill and we're not actually understanding what's happening in their life and not understanding their environment, their stressors, their nutrition, all of these things? And I feel like, and it took some bravery to step against that because when you're
Mm-hmm.
taught thing and this is like ingrained in you, and then you're kind of, not to say that I'm anti conventional medicine because it definitely has its place for certain situations and circumstances, but at the same time, when we're continuing to just witness so many people suffer when they do not need to be suffering, then that in itself is a problem. And that is where we need to get to the bottom of
Mm-hmm.
what bridge do we need to build here to resolve this?
Yeah, and I think so. We've set up here locally. A friend of mine has set it up, and it's amazing. Like a health networking event that's for conventional and non-conventional practitioners once a month to meet, and it is really helpful for starting to build some of those bridges of how these things can work together, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, none of this. So like, if you've got cancer and you're having these really strong drugs and you need them, they're the treatment, and that's like a clear one of where they work, they save lives, they're great. But then because of the kind of medicines they are, they're also actually, if you can work at the same time with someone holistic who can help mitigate the damage that it's doing to your gut, to your maybe mental health, to your muscular health, all these other things, and when those things can work together, that's like a good example of where it can help recovery. It can help you feel less awful while you're having the treatments, which is a big part of them being successful, and then help
Yeah.
you get back quicker once they're done, and then them not having other damages like stripping out your gut microbiome, and then suddenly you start getting a whole load of other symptoms as a result
Yeah.
of the treatment that saved your life, but then might ruin your quality of life. So when these things can work together, it can be brilliant.
Mhm. Yes, I love that so much. And I love that idea of that convention where we're bringing everybody together from both perspectives, both lens. It's not that we're enemies. We're all on the same team here with a similar mission, and we're trying to help people heal. And ultimately, when we can bridge and combine the expertise in both lenses, that in itself, and when we don't shut down the other, I feel like it's
Yeah.
being open to learning something new and different, even if it's totally different from what you've been implementing or taught,
Hmm.
in order to lead to better outcomes for people. And like you said, if we can mitigate the adverse effects of these stronger medications with a more holistic care and even lead to better quality of life, better outcomes by combining it in the right way. And even, for example, maybe we can mitigate the dosage of this medication because we
Yeah.
can implement this holistic piece of that so that we don't need as much of this to have as much of a side effect. There's all of these like domino effects that can
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. And I think it is, I mean, I'm mostly hopeful. It's difficult because this stuff takes a lot of time, and then
Yeah.
people get into this like has to be one or the other. And then I think sometimes people who've had really bad experiences with traditional medicine,
Mm.
go the other way and try and really like push no traditional medicine at all, which can do damage. So there are, there's a long way to go, but I am hopeful that there are like ways where you can get that balance.
Yes.
Um, and then I guess so. The one of the things I want to talk about with hormone health,
Mhm.
that's something I think about a lot. Like I'm definitely someone who had like horrendous hormones for years, and that was an area where I got dismissed a lot because again
Mm.
the range of what is like quote unquote normal in terms of like pain and um, mood swings of relation to hormones is pretty broad, and I guess most women who've had difficult periods will have the experience of having gone and just been like, they're just like, no, it's normal, without really asking very many follow-up questions. It has to be pretty
Yeah.
serious, or you have to be trying to have a baby before investigation starts in general. And so I guess I'm interested in hearing a bit about how what people can do to help with their hormone health.
Yes, absolutely. What I would say, so with hormones, what we want to do is a biggie that is a core foundation for hormone health is our adrenal health, as that plays a
Hmm.
huge role in the production of several hormones and also to stabilizing cortisol. I'd say that's a core foundation, regardless of what specific imbalance is at play. So, adrenal health, so that looks at, for example, looking at different routines that we have in our day to day. For example, instead of waking up and jumping right onto your phone or jumping straight to the coffee machine, is to maybe even just take 1 minute to do some deep breathing or like write down a few things that you're grateful for. If you're able to step outside and get a little bit of fresh air, depending on when you wake up, get a little bit of sunlight in the morning is beautiful for your adrenal health. Sipping on some warm lemon water or an herbal tea before jumping straight to caffeine, getting in a nice balanced breakfast with some fiber, some fat, some protein in there. These are gentle ways that may seem simple, yet they're profound when you do them consistently. And that's the biggie here is consistency is key. And
Hmm.
this is also where we need to break away from that all or nothing mentality too. So how can we both find that balance where it's I can be consistent, but it's sustainable at the same time and not overwhelming because that backfires, of course. So it's a very unique approach and every single person it can look differently. So it's knowing that your journey, your routine can look very different from your best friends, from your cousins, from your
Hmm.
sisters. And that's a beautiful thing too. So honoring that. So that can be a gentle way to begin supporting your hormones, ensuring that you're having consistent meals throughout the day too, and making sure that and I used to be guilty of this. I was super regimented with restricting calories, restricting fat, all of these things that I thought I was supposed to be doing were actually causing
Hmm.
more harm. So it's actually adding in more wholesome, nourishing, healthy fats, avocado, for example, olive oil, coconut oil, ghee, great sources of healthy fats. Adding in a nice balanced protein and fiber with that. So, having some fresh chicken or some ground beef with some bell peppers and some veggies and getting different sources in throughout the day shopping at like a local farmer's market, if you're able to, is a wonderful way to go. So these are just some gentle, nourishing ways for nutrition that you can support your adrenals. Vitamin C also plays a big role with adrenal health. So supporting vitamin C, lemon, for example, citrus, oranges, of course, bell peppers are great sources. And then if you really want to dive deeper, I love to utilize, it's called the Dutch hormone test,
Hmm.
which is a urine sample that gives a much broader, fuller picture of your hormone levels and imbalances, and looking much more in depth than typical blood panels do when it comes to understanding the sneaky root causes and the imbalances of your hormone imbalances in particular, and not just a one shot, one snapshot of your hormone levels. It's that
Hmm.
whole picture where we can really analyze and see patterns at play, which help us to get a much deeper understanding so we can help support hormone regulation more optimally too.
Yeah. And I think it is interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, I guess what you were saying about it's highly individualized for each person is actually why I started this, because I find it so interesting how, like, yeah, like you say, the thing that works for one, for that stress level or starting your morning, the thing that works for me might make my next door neighbor super stressed or
Yes.
vice versa. I was talking to someone yesterday or no, on Friday who does, like she uses aromatherapy and scent to help. And she was saying one of the things she loves about that is it's so interesting when you're going through with people's scents that like four people can smell the same thing, and one of them will be like, "Oh, this is like so calming," and the other one will be like, "This makes me so stressed out," and the other person
Yes.
will be like, "This is like what grounds me," and so then it's so individual that like one smell can have completely opposite effects on like four people.
Yes, I love that example. That is
Mm,
so true. It's perception. Everyone's
yeah.
perception is so different, and our body responds in different ways for different reasons. It's our um how we were uniquely designed. And I feel like especially when we're seeking advice, we're Google searching or now chat GPTing, and we are looking at maybe influencers or people on social media, and we're like, oh, she does it, I'm going to try this. And then it's like, oh, it doesn't work for me, but you feel frustrated because you're like, I'm doing the work,
Hmm.
but it's not working. Well, maybe because that's not best for you and your body's unique needs. So it's really tuning in to that personalization and really understanding. And I love to dive deep with my clients in this because even if I have a client with very similar, say, Dutch hormone results or GI map results,
Hmm.
their suggestions and recommendations are so different, so unique. And it's like they'd have totally different imbalances going on. When in reality, it's just what they need uniquely is different than what someone else's needs. And also comes back to those imbalances developed for different reasons for say Sarah than it did Mackenzie. So it's
Hmm.
like we need to understand that picture of your unique factors and your unique journey that you're on, and not feeling that pressure to compare or to need to try to do all the things that so and so is doing, and understanding that maybe that may not actually be best for you and your body too.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think it was the third ever episode of this. I spoke to this lady who does like, she's actually amazing. She was like, had never really done exercise, had a corporate job, and then after kids, like started going to the gym, and then became like a bikini bodybuilder over like 5 years, and then got really into it. And now she does like yoga and all this amazing stuff. But she was basically saying like when people come to her often, they're like want to diet, and she's like, yeah, but like all diets work for the right person with the right thing, but like it's and like there's no point in giving people meal plans because you don't know what they have in their kitchen, how they can cook, like what maybe their kids or their husband won't eat something. So what you've got to do is like give them the education, like you say about, oh, we need more fats, and then here's like 10 places you can get those from. What of
Yes.
those do you like?
Yes.
um and then like how does your kitchen work? Do you need something that you can make in 5 minutes, or have you got an hour, whatever, all these. But it's finding the things that work for each person. And I'm like a complete carb, like I cannot run without carbs. My body just doesn't. So any like low carb diet, I'm immediately like falling asleep all the time. Like
Yes.
when my
Exactly.
husband, if he even looks at a plate of pasta, will like immediately put on 5 pounds and is like, I can't do this every day.
Yes.
So we have to
Exactly.
like balance that at home, where sometimes I'll make things where we can it's quite similar, but basically we're eating slightly differently because we have different needs, even in one household.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Yes. And that's okay too. I feel like
Yeah.
people feel stressed when it's like, oh, I have to eat differently than my partner, my husband, or my kiddos. And it's also too learning how to create nutrition and meals in a way that makes sense for their life and their season of life too. So different seasons can absolutely change what we need to implement, but also too, it's knowing that okay, maybe, for example, I prep maybe some extra pasta for my husband, and then I myself am going to stick with, for example, some sweet potatoes or some veggies or something that I can also simply put in the air fryer and it's good to go. And it
Mhm.
doesn't need to be a complicated thing either. And it's learning how to be sustainable so that you can actually follow through with that thing. And that's the biggie. It's like we set all these goals and we are like, okay, I'm going to follow this plan. But if it doesn't fit your life and your season, then you can't follow it through. When you can't follow it through, that doesn't lead to any benefit.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the thing that people can find difficult at the beginning of this, because they often want like a, week one, like a plan, but doesn't really work that, because a lot of it's about figuring out what's going to work for you and how
Yeah.
does your lifestyle work. And like almost always the biggest problem people have is time. So actually, what are we going
Yeah.
to take away? Like, what is actually some of this root cause? Might be things that are in your day-to-day life. So how are we going to start eliminating some of those stresses, or
Yeah.
taking stuff away before we start adding stuff in?
Exactly. Sometimes it is. I love that you bring this up. We're actually doing less instead of adding more to the plate, and that's going to have a more powerful impact.
It's really tricky, especially
It
when
is.
time is often the biggest problem for people.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yes. I feel like it also too, I love to look at time suckers. And time
Mhm,
suckers, it can also be a little bit different for each person too. But for example, social media is a big common time sucker that we often don't
mhm,
realize. Even if we look at it for 5 minutes, that 5 minutes could have been spent maybe doing some deep breathing or just stepping
mhm.
outside and getting some fresh air. And they so easily sneak up on us. Or it could be, for example, maybe we're saying yes to too much and we're not setting healthy boundaries. That could be another time sucker too. So it's looking at what are some things that maybe we don't need to be spending time on that we can utilize to add more time to our day.
Yeah, and that's a really that I mean that comes up loads because it's so difficult to do. And
Mhm.
especially if you're like, I'm a bit of a people pleaser, so like saying no has been a really hard thing for me to learn. And I've probably only got really good at it in the last maybe 2 years. And even now, I still find it difficult. If it's like people I really love, or but I just don't have the space or time on my plate, I still find it really hard to say, actually, and
Mm.
sometimes it's when it's not for something else. So, like, actually, this week is a good example. So, my husband is away for work. So, it's just me. So, I've got, a toddler, two dogs, a business to run. Like, it's pretty full
Mm.
on. And you can hear in my voice, I've like had a bit of a cold, but it's like mainly allergies. So, I'm not necessarily like feeling my best. And like, normally when my husband's away, I have like a couple of girlfriends who come around in the evening sometimes. But and actually that'll be the thing that's hard, is then if one of them texts me to today and says like, oh, would you want me to come around one evening, because I kind of do, but also probably I ought to just go to bed at 9 o'clock every night this week because I'm tired. And
Yeah.
that's the no that I struggle to say, because I
Mm.
feel bad, because I'm like, oh, it would be nice, but actually, like, I know it'd be better for
Mm.
me to have an early night. But it's hard when
Mm.
there's no reason. It's just like, actually no, because I just need to go to bed. Feels like hard.
Hard. Get that completely. Oh yes, yes, that tension comes up and you're just like
Yeah.
tug of war. It's definitely challenging. And I feel that it is taking that pause where it's like learning to tune in, because more often we can feel it in our body. Our mind may be saying or trying to trick us into one direction, but we can feel in our body, and when we can tune in and go, okay, if I respond and say yes, how does that feel in my body? versus
Hmm.
if I respond and say no, how does that feel in my body? But also to bringing and validating, like I would love to spend time with her, but I also know this week is a lot and I need to prioritize my sleep. So maybe this week isn't the most fitting and it's not the best timing, but I can say yes next week. Maybe next week is just a better week. So it's like finding that compromise
Yeah.
and to kind of meet in the middle ground there.
Yeah. And it is really hard, and especially um, with family, it can be really hard. And I think that's
Yeah.
where people have the most difficulty with that. And then ironically, that often brings a lot of stress, which
Yes.
keeps on all of these other problems that we've been talking about.
Totally. Exactly. And these are so, I love this because these are like the deeper root causes that are
Mhm.
so often overlooked, where we are navigating and dealing with having a hard time saying no, or we're people pleasers and or perfectionists, and we have these characteristics, but also too in the lens of not shaming that part of you, not
Yeah.
shaming these characteristics, and in fact they have developed for a reason, right? Due to
Hmm.
life experiences, different things we've gone through, different ways we've had to adapt, and now it's like, okay, how can we see how it serves us? But also we must be aware and be mindful of how is this costing us? And noticing, okay, I can see that this is costing me here. Where do I need to build a better foundation to be able to find that middle ground with, say, there's that air. I feel like it's learning to set boundaries in the least intimidating way to start off with, to
Hmm.
build that confidence to set boundaries in a area that's maybe more difficult, like maybe a family member, and it's very difficult to set boundaries with this family member. Start setting boundaries in smaller ways. Even, for example, this is may sound like a silly one, but I remember I would say order a coffee at a coffee shop. And if I didn't like it, I would just say, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to drink it anyways. But that's actually a perfect area to practice advocating for
Hmm.
yourself and setting boundaries and saying, I'm so sorry. I actually don't like this. Can I swap this out for something else? And that in itself is a beautiful way to like build up that confidence to be able to and also reap the reward of, what, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. That was actually totally fine. There was no issue. They swapped it out and it was smooth. And that is just one example where you can start to practice in your life to be able to implement it more smoothly.
It's so funny that you say that's the exact thing that I did to do this. But
Aw,
and it was like with substitutions and things. So like I would start off by just saying like, oh, actually, can I have that without tomato or whatever? And it
yes.
because I just always used to you just have whatever. And yes, because it's strangers, it's no. And then if it does go badly, you can just not go back there. Like it's an easy, low stakes place because it's not an area of your life that could have like other consequences.
Yes,
And it teaches your
exactly.
nervous system it's not the end of the world because before you do it, it feels like it's going to be the end of the world. And then your
Yes.
nervous system learns like, oh, we did it and we didn't get eaten by the tiger, so we can do this.
Yes, exactly. I'm still alive. I did
Yeah.
not get that there. Yes, it's so true. But creating that sense of safety around it.
Hmm. And it is tricky. And I think like with friends, like if they good friends, like will understand as long as you can say it kindly of like, oh, actually, I don't have the space for it this week, but like you say, next week or next time, um, then they'll be fine. People who love you like want to support you, and with family it can be more complicated. But with friendships,
Yeah.
as long as it's not every time, and you're not obviously you have like phases where you take more than you give, and like phase of life. But as long as you're kind of aware of that and you make sure that you're resetting the balance when you can and when you have the space to, then that's kind of part of friendship, and your good friends will like know that.
Mm, yes, that's another is are they good friends? Are
Yeah.
they friends that you want to maintain as friends? Because sometimes too, that has been part of the process where maybe it's actually not the healthiest of friendships.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's in this journey that we recognize and see these unhealthy behaviors or characteristics, and maybe they're not truly supporting what's best for you, and they're for example saying no, just this one night and then I won't bother you, or kind of that manipulation can sneak
Hmm.
in. But that is another whole nother topic to go down, but that can be something just to be aware of, where it's, is this relationship also serving my, not to say that relationships are just about me, but also it's that mutual relationship where it's like we're both here for each other and we're both feeling supported in this relationship, this friendship.
Yeah, I actually have a course that I do for people when they're pregnant to do is, together, because I work with so many people postpartum. I sort of trying to get ahead of some of the common problems that people have, but the two of the big ones are like around boundaries and like village building, because people aren't very good at that. People often like complain, "Oh, my village hasn't showed up," but then with love,
Mm,
what have you done to like build one? Like, when
yeah.
your friend was sick, did you take some food around? Well, if you didn't,
Mm,
they're probably not going to think that you're in their list of people like when you just had a baby to take food around. It's like these are mutual things, and that's
yeah.
fine because you can start doing that any day you want. Like anyone who you care about, if they're having a tough time, you can be like, "Oh, can I just drop something around to you?" Da da
Yeah.
da. All these things that are, it's easy to start doing that if you want to live like that. Not everyone does, but with the boundaries, it's interesting because sometimes when you're outgrowing friendships or at big moments of change, which can be like when you're starting to, if you want to make big lifestyle changes to change your health,
Mhm.
you can notice that you're not like growing together anymore, and that actually like that tension can be a big part of the stressor in your life that you might not have noticed because it can happen very, very slowly.
Mm,
And that can be really difficult because it can be like such a big source of like stress or sadness.
yes. Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and we feel like these obligations to kind of maintain relationships, especially friendships. I think romantic relationships, people understand that sometimes people outgrow each other or there's ways to work on it. But sometimes friendships would benefit from essentially couples therapy and could probably be fixed, but we don't
Yeah.
have that like framework to do
Friendship therapy. That should absolutely be a thing. Yes, definitely. I do feel like, and it is in a way, sometimes we have to grieve. We have to go through a grieving process too,
it.
because there were definitely relationships, friendships in my life in the past that I realized were actually toxic and they were not healthy. And they were also fueling more unhealthy behaviors that I was
Hmm.
implementing. And I had to grieve that season, that quote unquote version of myself, and grieve those relationships because they still had benefits. They were still, obviously, when it comes to these relationships, there's many times there is still a benefit that's like keeping us holding on to that relationship. So it's
Yeah.
recognizing and seeing that we need to go through, and it's okay to go through a process where it's like, oh, okay, I'm letting go, or kind of like learning how to shift into who I'm being in a new way, and I'm no longer engaging in these behaviors, and I no longer can be in this environment that fuels these behaviors. But then I'm
Hmm.
also like sad, and I'm like, why am I sad about this? That's normal. That's a
Yeah.
big piece that I feel comes up a lot, and it comes up a lot for my clients as well, where it's like, man, I care about this person and they mean a lot to me, but I'm also realizing that this is something that I can't hold on to anymore. And I need to go through a journey, just like grieving a breakup. It's grieving that friendship and grieving those the positive things that you did have, but also knowing, and I feel like having support in this is so important, and having
Hmm.
community of
Yeah.
those around you that can support you in this is so important. And it's finding those like-minded people, and it can be uncomfortable. I'm in this season now. I just moved to Nashville, so I'm now trying to
Hmm.
find a new community, and it's hard to make friends as adults. It is
I
not easy.
know.
It is not easy, but it is getting out of your comfort zone and maybe joining like a book club or a hiking group or things that you
Hmm.
already enjoy doing, and just like plug yourself into these communities and put yourself out there in a way. And even if you meet one or two amazing people, beautiful. And it's just like that also gives you hope as far as if you're letting go of a relationship that may not be in alignment with who you are anymore, then you can meet those who are more in alignment with you and the person you also are becoming. And that too is helpful in the grieving process.
Yeah, and I think so. For me, when I've obviously done a more than one big move, but when I especially moved to the States for the first time and we didn't know anyone, and I just had to get much braver. Like when I went to things like hiking groups, if I met someone I liked, I had to get, because a couple of times I'd come home and say to my husband, "Oh, I met someone I don't think was so nice," and then he'd be like, "Great, if you arranged to meet them," and I'd just be like, "No." So I had to get way better at being like, "Oh, I really like you. Do you want to go on another hike, or like go for a coffee, or and what's your number?" And it's quite weird because it feels like dating. And then I was never the kind
Yes.
of dater who was the like, I was always a bit more passive in that, let people come to me. So now it's like a whole new skill to learn.
Yeah.
And then, and sometimes people don't want to, but actually some of my like closest girlfriends that I've got down here are from where I've done that. And then we have gone on another couple of hikes, or I've said like, "Oh, I'm already going out with a couple of other girls for drinks, like come and join us." And then some of them have, and then, and that's how you kind of slowly, but you have to like be okay with the ones who don't want to do it. And that's the really hard bit because that feels personal, but it might be just they already live here. They've got loads of friends. They're busy. It's not necessarily
Yes.
about you.
Yes, I get that too. It's can be easy to take it personal and feel like, "Oh, did they not like
Yeah.
me? Did I say something wrong?" Those things can definitely come up there. But I love that perspective shift where it's like, you know what, maybe they're just got a lot on their plate right now, or they're
Yeah.
like settled into their own routine and that's perfect. And that's okay too. So it's like it is like this, it is navigating kind of that fear of rejection in a way where it's like, okay, maybe I will maybe feel rejected at times, but it doesn't mean that I've done something per se wrong or that I am a bad person or not worthy of having a friendship. It's more that maybe we're just not right time, right place situation, just like dating, where it's like it's not in alignment
Yeah.
and it's not fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really hard. It makes you feel like a little kid on the playground again, doesn't it? Of like, oh
Yes.
my God.
Yes. Does Tommy like me? Does Tommy like?
Literally. It's so funny. Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this, and I really like the kind of one of the reasons I really like this space, and we've talked about it a bit, but the kind of wholeness of it, of like that understanding that all of these things feed into each other, and that things that can seem like they're not health related, like
Yes.
moving somewhere new and not having anyone to hang out with, and how that can then impact your mental health, can then affect your actual physical health, and how I just love how these things like work together, and when people have that understanding, and then you can help them understand how those things that can seem nothing to do with your health might be actually the thing that's stopping you sleeping, or that's making you poop weird. It's all like linked together.
Yes. All of these things that seem disconnected are so connected.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yes.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for your time. And if people want to like work with you or find out more, what can they do?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a lovely conversation. And people can connect with me on Instagram is where I'm most active on social media at Wholeness in Health would be the best place. I can also share my email as well, Rachel at wholenessandhealth by Rachel.com. It's kind of a doozy. Or my
It'll
website,
be in the
wholeness
notes.
notes section. Perfect. There we go.
So you can
Yeah.
click.
Easy.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.